Bidan Lama, a computer science graduate with magna cum laude from Claflin University, woke up early in the morning to search for jobs. Suddenly, he heard 2 rounds of gunshots on the road. He ran to see whether anyone had been injured, and he never came back. He was shot. Bidan had an elderly father, an unmarried sister, and a differently abled brother who relied on him for a good future after years of hardships in the hills of Nepal. Now the poor family lost their beacon of hope because of one single bullet fired by a mentally unstable person. Yearly, thousands of people like Bidan die because of gun violence. It is a grave problem in the United States. According to a 2016 research report by Eric Grinstein and David Hemingway, those living in the United States are 25 times more likely to die in a gun homicide than citizens living in any other country. Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was added to the United States Constitution on December 15, 1791. It states, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Today, many people interpret the Second Amendment as a source of their rights to bear arms. They oppose gun regulation of any kind, seeing it as an infringement on their constitutional freedom. Others think that this right allows individuals, good and bad, to have guns they do not need, leading to an increase of criminal activities. In the 2008 Supreme Court case, District of Columbia versus Heller, the Supreme Court affirmed the individual legal right to bear arms for the purpose of self-defense for the first time. The Gun Control Act of 1968. The Gun Control Act is an existing federal law that regulates interstate and foreign commerce in firearms, including importation, prohibited persons, and licensing provisions. This law regulates firearms at the federal level and requires that citizens and legal residents must be at least 18 years of age to purchase shotguns or rifles and ammunition. All other firearms, handguns for example, can only be sold to people 21 and older. Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 1993. The enactment of this law derived from the injury of James Brady caused by an attempted murder on President Ronald Reagan. On November 30, 1993, the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act was enacted, amending the Gun Control Act of 1968. The Brady Law imposed as an interim measure a waiting period of 5 days before a licensed importer, manufacturer, or dealer may sell, deliver, or transfer a handgun to an unlicensed individual. The waiting period applies only in states without an acceptable alternate system of conducting background checks on handgun purchasers. The interim provisions of the Brady Law became effective on February 28, 1994, and ceased to apply on November 30, 1998. While the interim provisions of the Brady Law apply only to handguns, the permanent provisions of the Brady Law apply to all firearms. Lack of education. After the recent horrific shooting at Oxford High School in Michigan, the high school implemented special training and drills to deal with future similar episodes. When the incident occurred, students created makeshift barricades with chairs and doors. Although some students praised lockdown training, critics questioned the effectiveness of such drills. Many states require mandatory safety drills which hugely benefit school safety, such as ALICE, with which Oxford High School is affiliated. ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. It is a 2-day course designed for school teachers, staff, and police officers who, after completing the program, are responsible for teaching what they learned to students and local community members. But critics warn of the cumulative effects on the students' mental health that the drills may have. In the Oxford High School case, one of the students responsible for the shooting was charged with murder and terrorism. Justice may have been claimed, but it remains difficult to completely forestall gun violence in schools. What are the possible solutions? Number 1. Permit or licenses requirement. Daniel Webster, director of the Center for Gun Policy and Research at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, believes that requiring gun buyers to apply for permits or licenses would be highly effective in curbing the rates of shootings. 12 states and Washington, D.C. have such laws. Many of these states require would-be handgun buyers to pass rigid safety training. Some require people to check in with their local sheriff's office or police department before purchasing the gun. This may deter so-called straw purchases, in which someone stands in for an unauthorized buyer. In 1995, Connecticut implemented a licensing system for gun purchase. Over 1 decade, the gun homicide and suicide rates in the state declined. In contrast, Missouri removed its licensing system in 2007. The gun homicide and suicide rates rose exponentially in the following 10 years. There are several other examples of the success of a rigorous licensing system. Number 2. Universal background checks. Right now, gun buyers in the United States only have to go through a background check if they buy a gun in a gun store. They do not have to go through a background check if they buy from an unregistered private party. A universal background check will require all gun buyers to go through a detailed background check before purchasing any gun. The purpose of the gun purchase should be checked and confirmed before the person is allowed to buy it. Age and psychological status should also be checked thoroughly to prevent any easily preventable gun violence. The criminal background of the gun seller should also be scrutinized before he or she is allowed to sell guns. 96% of Americans are in favor of universal background checks, but this measure will not solve the problem alone. Number 3. Red flag laws. 6 states, California, Washington, Oregon, Connecticut, Indiana, and Florida, have strict red flag laws. Policemen can file a petition to the court to remove guns temporarily from gun holders with nefarious records. In the first 3 states, even family members can petition. Number 4. Strict laws on storing guns. Massachusetts requires its residents to store guns in a safe space away from minors. If this condition is not met, the gun holder will need to pay up to $20,000 and up to 15 years in prison. This law has significantly reduced gun violence in the state. After the Las Vegas shooting in October, 77% of responders said that gun holders should be required to store their guns in safe places. So, gun violence is a serious problem in the United States, and thousands of people like Bidan Lama will continue losing their lives unless concrete action is taken by state and federal governments.